Note, Irwin Cotler is a former Minister of Justice and Attorney General in Canada and a tireless advocate for human rights. He currently serves as Canada's Special Envoy in preserving Holocaust Remembrance and combating anti-Semitism. He's also chair of the Raoul Wallenberg Center for Human Rights. Mr. Cotler, welcome. So we've heard how much, of course, the court case is so crucial in this situation. Talk to us about the legal steps that can be taken to protect Jewish communities worldwide.
Thank you, Nuri, for the kind words of introduction, and thank you to the Combat Anti-Semitism movement and to CREEF for organizing this timely and significant forum. In the last weeks alone, the annual audit by B'nai B'rith of hate crimes in Canada demonstrated that for the fifth consecutive year, Jews were the most targeted of minority groups. The Anti-Defamation League demonstrated that in the United States, American Jews were the most targeted group for hate crimes. And reports which were emanating out of Europe, whether it be the United Kingdom or Germany or the Ukraine, and I can go on, demonstrated that Jews are the most targeted group for hate crimes in Europe. And in fact, the United Nations and the UN specialized agencies demonstrate as well the emergence of the selective indictment and opprobrium against Israel as the targeted collective Jew among the nations. Moreover, as the United Nations Special Envoy, the European Union Special Envoy to combat anti-Semitism, Katharina von Schnurbein, put it, the actual incidence of hate crimes targeting Jews is actually much greater than the reported crimes themselves. For much of the hate crimes against Jews, in fact, go unreported. And they go unreported because Jews either are not reporting the hate crimes, or they believe if they report it, they would go unaddressed or unredressed, or they do not trust the authorities from their experience that they will do anything in order to prevent and protect against these hate crimes. And because, regrettably, anti-Semitism has become mainstreamed, normalized in the popular culture, in the international arena, such that it is underpinned by a culture of indifference almost, a culture of impunity, an utter lack of outrage. And where the anti-Semitic murder of Sarah Halimi is a dramatic case study of both the pandemic of anti-Semitism on the one hand and the indifference and impunity that underpin it on the other, which otherwise as well incentivize the further acts of anti-Semitism. And where, for example, the murder of Sarah Halimi was not an isolated event, but it was part of a pattern, a context, a culture of anti-Semitic incitement and hate crimes targeting Jews of France, where police not only did not respond quickly and effectively to prevent and protect against the murder, but in fact, they refused, despite repeated calls, to conduct an internal investigation into what had happened, where prosecutors were reluctant to prosecute the murder as an anti-Semitic hate crime, where the judiciary did not address the anti-Semitic criminality with the gravity and the appreciation that it warranted, where, for example, a man who threw a dog outside a window under the influence of alcohol was held criminally responsible. But the person who threw Sarah Halimi and murdered her in an anti-Semitic act under the influence of inebriation was in fact held not to be criminally responsible. Where the media, the French media, did not report properly on the murder, consistently sanitizing the anti-Semitic details. And where the legislature has not adopted the necessary legislation to protect against and guard against the incentivization of such crimes. Accordingly, what is needed, and I say this as a former Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada, one who was also serving as a chief prosecutor, let alone as a longtime parliamentarian in the legislature. What we need are dedicated hate crime enforcement units who are also educated in the ability to identify, recognize, monitor, and combat anti-Semitism, where prosecutors, judges, civil servants, media, and legislatures have equally to be educated and trained to recognize, identify, monitor, and combat anti-Semitism. In conclusion, the murder of Sarah Halimi is a looking glass into what needs to be done globally to combat this pandemic of anti-Semitism. For reasons of time, I will just enumerate the imperatives for such an action plan. Number one, we have to enhance the adoption and implementation of the IRA working definition on anti-Semitism, the most authoritative, comprehensive, and international definition that we have. And if I may say so, as somebody who was present at the creation and throughout the 15-year process of adoption, the most representative definition, because it was adopted after a 15-year period of democratic engagement involving intergovernmental bodies, governments, parliaments, civil society leaders, experts, and the like. Two, we have to mainstream the IRA definition as an educational and training resource across all sectors of society, including, in particular, as I referenced, the justice sector. Number three, we need to invoke and mainstream the parliamentary antecedents that underpin the IRA definition. The London Declaration for Combating Anti-Semitism, adopted at the Inter-Parliamentary Conference on Anti-Semitism in London, and then the Ottawa Parliamentary Protocol, adopted at the Inter-Parliamentary Conference to Combat Anti-Semitism in Ottawa. We need to invoke and mainstream the combating of anti-Semitism in the social media. We are witnessing now a pandemic of anti-Semitism in the social media, the renewal of the classical anti-Semitic tropes of the Jews as the poisoners of the wells, which have found expression where Jews, the Jewish people, and Israel are blamed for the manufacture, the spread, and indeed profiting from the COVID-19 pandemic. Where political leaders, and here I want to salute Premier Valls of France, where political leaders have to adopt a zero tolerance policy with regard to anti-Semitism, whether it's within their own political parties or in the public arena as well. Where what is needed at this point is for countries respectively to adopt a national action plan to combat anti-Semitism, and where anti-Semitism must also be combated in the international arena, because where we are witnessing there is the laundering of anti-Semitism under the protective cover of the United Nations, the authority of international law, the culture of human rights, and indeed under the struggle against racism itself. As former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan put it and shared it with me a number of times in discussion, that a United Nations that does not put the combating of anti-Semitism as a priority on its agenda is a United Nations that betrays its past and forfeits its future. And so, in a word, anti-Semitism, as I began and conclude, is an assault on our common humanity. It cannot be fought or won by Jews alone. It requires a global constituency of conscience to combat it. And as we've learned only too painfully and too well, that while it begins with Jews, it doesn't end with Jews. Thank you.